Daniel Ricciardo had high hopes for his most recent race in Austin, Texas, but unfortunately for him, things didn't go as planned. The Formula One driver finished the United States Grand Prix in a disappointing 16th place. He began the race in 15th place and was not able to gain much ground from there. He managed to make his way to the pit in 13th, where he switched to a hard tire from the medium he had been using. This seemed promising as he slowly made his way up to 11th. For the back part of the race, he just couldn't maintain his momentum. As he continued his attempts to push through the main block of racers, he ended the race in dead last place at 16th. Ricciardo was very open about the challenges he's been experiencing in this race and beyond this year. When talking about his day and what he thought about it, he says, "We can greet each other, then we can say bye. That's about it. The in-between, I have no idea. I have no idea what to say," Ricciardo told our reporter when asked about his frustrating day. "Honestly, it's been 2022, the year that it's been, just so far off the pace. I can't lean on it, can't push, can't get the time out of it. Also, the inconsistency throughout the lap times, it shows it really is a struggle, but to have such a big margin again, it remains a mystery. So yeah, I love Texas, I love Austin, but that race for me was not enjoyable." It's unclear what exactly is going on with the McLaren driver. Even the best athletes have periods with little momentum to rely on. It's possible that Ricciardo is just at a slow point in his career and will come back to prominence in another season. He talked about his grip during this past race, which he has blamed somewhat on his grip. He said, "I hoped today was going to be better. I really thought after yesterday we had a bit more to show, but it was really tough today. I could tell from early on in the race that it was going to be tricky. We unfortunately just didn't have the grip. I couldn't really push the car like I could see the others around me doing, so it was just a struggle." Austin certainly wasn't the first time Ricciardo came up short in 2022. He reflected on his failures this year, saying, "Yeah, when you think it can't get worse, it does. I don't know how I'm continuing to continue, because painful is an understatement. We'll keep our chin up and try to find a way. Obviously, days like this are pretty painful to try to deal with and understand, as we put a lot of effort in but didn't get rewarded. We'll keep going. For his sake, hopefully Ricciardo can push through the pain and find his mojo again." Ricciardo's partnership with McLaren was supposed to last until the end of 2023, but the two parties have decided to split ways at the end of the 2022 season instead. This is not an unfamiliar occurrence in F1. The Ricciardo-McLaren situation is just another example of it. Here are 10 other times drivers didn't see out their contracts. First up on our list is Sergio Perez and his contract with Racing Point. Perez had a 2021 contract with Racing Point, but this didn't mean he would be competing for them. Although the working relationship had begun back in 2014, it looked like things weren't going to continue in 2020. Racing Point had repeatedly stated their drivers were on contract but weren't letting on if they would actually be racing or not. Ultimately, it would be Lance Stroll, the son of the team's owner Lawrence Stroll, who would replace Perez. This may have been the best thing that could have happened to Perez, as later in 2021, he would join Red Bull's star-studded team instead. He is set to compete with them through 2024. Next up is Ayrton Senna and his contract with Toleman. Senna's deal with the team was set to go from 1984 to 1986. After a standout rookie season, Senna wanted out of his Toleman contract to pursue a better deal. He decided to go after a contract with Lotus. This led to Toleman benching the driver for the Italian Grand Prix. This is because Lotus had announced their new signing before actually activating Senna's buyout clause. He would go on to race for Senna, and at the 1985 Portuguese Grand Prix, he would get his first Formula One win in only his second race for the team. Up next is Nikita Mazepin and his contract with Haas. It was February 2022, and Mazepin was preparing for his second season with Haas. At this time, Russia invaded Ukraine, and his contract was suddenly up in the air. This is because Mazepin is son of Russian oligarch Dmitry Mazepin. One of the team's lead sponsors was also Dmitry Mazepin's company, Uralkali. To avoid controversy, the team dropped Mazepin, replacing him with Kevin Magnussen. Mazepin complained about the events, calling it an example of cancel culture. Coming up next is Andrea de Cesaris with his Ligier contract. In 1985, de Cesaris had one of the most unbelievable crashes of the 80s. During the Austrian Grand Prix that year, the driver would roll his car several times off the track. This didn't make his boss, Guy Ligier, too happy. Because of the expensive cost of repairing damage de Cesaris had caused, Ligier decided to cut him loose. Ligier said, "De Cesaris is costing us too much money. I've told him time and time again that we want a calm driver, one who can control his impulses. Andrea is a really nice guy, but we simply cannot afford him." De Cesaris shot back at Ligier after these events, saying hard times are part of F1. Ligier wants money. Next up is Ralf Schumacher and his contract with Jordan. Although the 1997 signing with Jordan seemed like Schumacher's big break, things would work out differently. After disappointments in the team's performance and how he was being treated, Schumacher wanted out of his contract. Schumacher was looking to switch to the Williams team instead. A high court hearing was initially scheduled when Ralf announced he would be exiting his contract, but this didn't take his release clause into account. After his brother Michael paid $2 million to be released from his contract, Ralf was off to greener pastures. Next on our list is Alain Prost and his contract with Renault. Coming up next is Prost's switch from McLaren to Renault and then back to McLaren in the early 80s. The team and driver didn't seem to get along, so this was an expected move at the time. What's truly astounding about how this played out is that Prost was able to leave the contract while still being on Renault's payroll. According to Ron Dennis, Renault didn't play it very well because they ended up with the contractual obligations still intact. The amazing thing in the negotiation, and of course I can say this now, is that Renault paid Alain's retainer in 1984. It was quite an interesting negotiation, as you can imagine. Prost would go on to win 3 world championships with his chosen team. Coming up next is Heinz-Harald Frentzen and his contract with Jordan. Although Frentzen had a run at the World Championship in 1999, his contract would come to a sudden end early into 2001. Jordan decided to drop Frentzen after he delivered some underwhelming performances. Jordan released a quote saying, "We had an exchange of views following the British Grand Prix, and this is the outcome." Frentzen didn't take this lying down and pursued legal action against the team, which resulted in an eventual settlement. It appears in hindsight that Jordan dropped Frentzen to make room for Takuma Sato. Up next is Fernando Alonso and his contract with Ferrari. Alonso joined Ferrari in 2010, and at first it seemed like a perfect fit. Despite impressive performances in 2010 and 2012, by 2014 the relationship had turned shaky. Alonso would escape McLaren instead of seeing out his contract into 2016. This would prove a mistake, as Ferrari would greatly improve in the years after his departure. Coming next is Valtteri Bottas and his contract with Williams. Bottas was under contract with Williams when Nico Rosberg announced his retirement and created an open spot for Mercedes. This seemed like a perfect fit for Bottas. Ultimately, Bottas paid millions to get out of his contract and go to the team he wanted. This deal was reportedly largely responsible for Williams' wide profit margins that year. Finally is Kimi Räikkönen and his deal with Ferrari. Although he would win the World Championship in his first year with the team, Räikkönen would disappoint the team in the following years. Although he was set to race in 2010, the team opted to pay him not to compete instead. The racer reportedly earned $25 million to sit on the bench that year. This led to him eventually returning to Lotus in 2012. What are your thoughts on Ricciardo's recent performances? Do you think he'll be able to turn things around, or is this the beginning of the end for the racer? How about the other contracts that weren't seen through? Can you think of any other famous Formula One contract disputes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.